Joseph, what are you doing? It's 4 a.m.
Don't you see, Danny? This is my trap hole! It was made for me!
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. I'm writing this from Locals, where I am currently struggling with figuring out how to play Subterror, and let me tell you, it is not going well. I figure a different flavor of trap card control is just the reprieve I need, so let's take a look at Traptrix. So here's the list, and not gonna lie, I just put an artifact in for the hat memes. As always, I'll give you a little bit of background about the archetype, a little bit of a discussion about what I hope the deck can do, and of course, the card by card. So firstly, for those of you that don't know, Traptrix is a deck that really pushes the boundaries of what you're allowed to print in cardboard before the CIA shuts down your company like a socialist nation in Latin America. These little girls, which are actually 400-year-old anthropomorphized plants and insects, so it's not weird, Mom, all center around the whole series of normal trap cards. They used to be the focus of a control deck that used 3 generic engines, each of which has been so painfully power-crept that you'll receive an immediate and complimentary X3 drop by your head judge if you register a fire hand at any regional nationwide. Bottomless is nowhere near as busted as it was back in 2014, and it turns out that searching Disruption isn't particularly powerful when your opponent is already behind a board of burly bunguses. Because of this, the deck faded into the last most powerful trap hole of them all, Binder Bulk. Until now, Traptrix Sarah is a card that's about as powerful as legally allowed in the state of New York. It's another Link monster that might as well say, if this doesn't save the archetype, nothing will. It, when a normal trap card is activated, special summons a Traptrix from your deck, then, when a Traptrix monster's effect is activated, adds a normal trap hole card to your hand. Another card that combos with itself, huh? Daring today, aren't we? While it definitely makes the archetype more consistent, this new and improved version of the deck smacks of paleo. It's able to keep up with meta decks in terms of resource generation, it's able to deal with threats as they're deployed, but it's miserable at answering monsters that have already come down, and even worse at applying pressure. We've attempted to downplay this debilitating downside by taking advantage of Traptrix Dionea. Her adeptness and making rank 4s enables our finisher flavor of the month, Utopia Double, who is pretty good at dealing 8,000 damage to anyone greedy enough to leave a Galatea on board. So with that, let's get into the card by card. Firstly, for our Traptrix, we're playing 3 of each good one, Dionea, Murmello, and Mantis, alongside 1 Nepenthes for corner cases and additional Sarah material. After that are our hand traps, 3 Ash Blossom and 3 Phantasme, since we want to be searching our holes, not drawing them. Our monster lineup ends with Artifact Scythe, whose hidden passive will always cause it to appear in our opener. For spells, we are really hurting for draw power, so despite needing to see a specific card in our extra deck, we're on 3 Extravagance alongside 1 Double or Nothing. For traps, we're on 4 holes, Time Space, Bottomless, Floodgate, and Treacherous, which may be a little bit ambitious. After that, we've got 3 Impermanence, which is sus in a deck with Thanos Dragon, but matters so much for triggering Sarah that it's worth the nombo, 3 Sanctum, so we don't get Orcust to hell, 3 Heavy Storm Duster, 3 Compulsory Evacuation Device, and 3 Shade Brigandine, which allows you to trigger Sarah's effect on your first turn. In the extra, we're playing an Extravagance board of 3 Utopia, 3 Utopia Double, 3 Rafflesia, 3 Sarah, and 3 Boral Sword Dragon to close games. So with that, let's jump into the games. Our first match is up against Blue Eyes, and oh my goodness does my opponent want a fusion summon. Wow! Frightfur Patchwork, Predaplant Orpheus Scorpio, and Polymerization. Yikes. We're going first, and thank God for that, our hand is fantastic. We're going to lead with a copy of Pot of Extravagance. We'll draw 2 cards off the top of our deck before normal summoning a copy of Murmello, getting a Floodgate, going into Sarah, and setting 5. It doesn't get much better than this, folks. In draw phase, we'll activate Artifact Sanctum to get ourselves a copy of Scythe, then we'll activate Sarah's effect to get a copy of Mantis. We'll activate Mantis' effect to return a set spell or trap from our set zone to our hand, reset it, and then use Sarah's effect to set a copy of Time Space. Our opponent's going to lead with a Bingo Machine a Go-Go before removing our Sarah from the board. Ooh, just a little bit too late. They'll activate Orpheus Scorpio's effect after we Ash Blossom the Patchwork. We'll negate that as well with our copy of Infinite Impermanence, and this should be the end of the game. We draw into another normal trap. We'll go to battle phase first to do as much as we can before we link off this copy of Mantis to prepare for a Sarah setup next turn. We'll do just that, set a card and pass it back to our opponent. They draw an alternative, which truth be told is quite good, but of course we have a copy of Bottomless. We will go ahead and banish it, and they will concede. Our second match is up against Altergeist, so let's see which stun deck shall reign supreme as King Durdle. King Durdle is mostly a ceremonial position. We're going first, which is great news, but less great news is that our hand lacks any Traptrix monsters, putting a lot of faith in this pot of extravagance. We're going to lead our main phase 1 with said pot, and we find off the top... oh god, a second pot and a Phantasme, always. Okay, so our opponent's going to lead with a copy of Evenly Matched. It's much less impressive when it's just Mystical Space Typhoon. I want the Scythe out of my deck, so I'll summon it. They'll normal summon a copy of Meluseek and go into Linkaribo. We will Ash the Meluseek and special summon this copy of Phantasme from hand. And wow, our hand looks much better now that we've sculpted it. For turn, we draw a copy of HSD, which is fantastic in the matchup. We'll activate Mermello's effect, they'll Veiler. I think that's the wrong target because now we're going into Sarah. We'll activate Shade Brigandine. They'll activate Personnel Spoofing to get a copy of Multi-Faker to hand. We'll special summon Shade Brigandine, triggering the effect of Sarah. They'll trigger the effect of Multi-Faker in hand, so it goes. We'll go into a Mermello, activate its effect to destroy this copy of Personnel Spoofing. They'll activate the effect of Multi-Faker to get a copy of Silquidius, and then they'll Ogre our second effect of Sarah. So now we have to push the issue. We'll go to Utopia Double, getting a copy of Double or Nothing to our hand, and Utopia will then attack into this copy of Linkaribo with Phantasme, and into this copy of Multi-Faker with Utopia. That prompts the Silquidius from our opponent, which will negate with Phantasme, but while we can flex, we can't attack directly with this Utopia. We don't have much of a clock, but neither does our opponent. They're going to lead with the Pot of Duality, but thankfully, the card they pick does in fact lose to Heavy Storm Duster. We'll activate that now and hope for the best. We find off the top, oh thank god, a monster that attacks. We'll activate Mantis' effect to get a copy of Dionea, and then flex a little bit, I suppose, before doing just shy of 4k to our opponent. We need our opponent to fade exactly one draw step, and they do. It's a second copy of Multi-Faker. We draw for turn, we'll normal summon this copy of Dionea, and that's just one more attacker, which is all we need. We're going to attack into their monster with our Utopia before getting in directly with all of our monsters. The Mantis, the Dionea, and the Thanos Dragon. Alright, so it's time for game 3, and you know what that means, a best of 3 versus meta. Our opponent is playing Orchest! God, I'm so sick of this deck. Konami, if you are listening, ban Mermaid, ban Orcus Nightmare, ban Galatea if you have to. Just make sure I don't have to see this again. Okay, that's probably enough of a tantrum for tonight. We're going first, which means we should be able to set up. We're going to normal summon a copy of Mermello. That's going to get a copy of Bottomless from our deck to our hand. We will set 2 and link summon a copy of Sarah, hoping for the best in the face of a Thanos. Our opponent for turn draws a Called By, which would be great if we had any hand traps. They'll go into a Light Stage, and god, Light Stage is so good against our board. They'll Ash our copy of Sarah, post HSD, and there's the second one. They'll lock our copy of Bottomless, which is frustrating, and yikes, this deck plays evilly now. We'll special summon a copy of Phantasme, which fixes our hand a little bit. Our opponent's going to be able to pop off here, unfortunately. They'll go into a copy of Galatea, activate Orcus Nightmare's effect, get a copy of Harp Horror to graveyard and Scared Zone from deck. They'll then use Scared Zone's grave effect to bring back Galatea, use Galatea's effect to set a copy of Crescendo, and then Xyz summon a copy of Dingirsu. That's going to trigger a whole host of effects which wipe our board. Afterwards, we're going to use Rusty Bard and Raggedy Cloak to get a copy of Silent Boots and get in for a fair amount of damage. Well, while we do have repeatability of Sarah, we don't really have any way to beat this board. We have to draw something that prompts the Crescendo, and thankfully we do, but we don't have much of a follow-up. They Ash it instead of activating the counter trap, which means they can basically beat us at any point here. They will Called By our copy of Mermello, which is frustrating. We get to link summon a copy of Sarah, and we'll set Impermanence in the correct column, but they will lock it. We'll activate Transience, and they'll activate Phantasme in response. Since the activation is negated, we get nothing, and that is just going to be the end of the game. They will destroy our copy of Sarah, and reattach a copy of Scared Zone before getting in for lethal. Alright, so it's time for game 2, and at the very least, our opponent's hand looks a little less impressive than it did last time. A copy of Eebly and a copy of Scared Zone, of course, are scary, especially alongside an Instant Fusion, but our hand is a little bit better, too. Let's see if we can play it out. We're going to lead with a copy of Mantis. They will effect Veiler our Mantis, which is fine, I suppose. We're going to go into a copy of Sarah, set 2, and hope for the best. This looks familiar. Our opponent's going to lead with a copy of Instant Fusion to get a copy of Terror from extra deck. We will go ahead and activate Infinite Impermanence, and then we'll activate the effect of Sarah, which fetches an Ash from our opponent's hand. Afterwards, they're going to normal summon a copy of Eebly and go into Nightmare Phoenix. Wait. This might be okay. If we Bottomless the Phoenix, they can't go into Mermaid, and it looks like they're just passing. Okay, this might work. We're going to normal summon a copy of Mantis to get a copy of Mirmello to hand. That allows us to set a copy of Floodgate. We just have to keep them off of link summoning for the foreseeable future. We'll pass it back to our opponent. They draw, oh my god, terraforming for turn. They're going to get a copy of Trickstar Lightstage, but we do have the Ash Blossom. They can prevent us from activating the Floodgate. They'll normal summon a copy of Scared Zone and attack. We'll activate Mantis's effect to shuffle it, and then reset this copy of Time-Space Trap Hole, both protecting our trap and preventing our opponent from popping off. I'm never going to special summon again. I hope you're aware. We're going to attack into this copy of Scherzo Skeleton and get in for 1,500. We'll set this copy of Treacherous Trap Hole, which we have no business activating ever. They draw a copy of Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine, and we've walked away with it. All right, it's time for that all-important Game 3, and we got away with the Game 2 with minimal interaction. Who's to say we can't get away with the Game 3 where we have to go second? Our opponent's going to pop off pretty hard with this grip. They're going to start by normal summoning a copy of Candina, getting a copy of Carabine to hand. They will special summon the Carabine and go into Cerberus. They'll go into Mermaid, discard, and we have the negation! Boom, baby! What did they discard? Ah. Okay. Well, we actually accomplished nothing here. They will instant fusion for a copy of Tear to go into Rusty Bardish, then activate Simple Skeleton's effect. In order to get Galatea back, then they'll activate the effect of Ancient Cloak to get Silent Boots, activate Galatea's effect to set a copy of Crescendo, summon Dingirsu, use Dingirsu's effect, special summon a copy of Silent Boots, go into Galatea number 2 so that Crescendo is live, set a second copy of Fogblade and pass it back. Things aren't looking great. We're going to activate Extravagance, trying to fetch that Climax, but they always have Ash. We'll normal summon a copy of Mirmello. That fetches a Fogblade from our opponent. Okay, not terrible. We'll go into a Sarah, set 2, and pass. They'll activate Shade Brigandine, which actually triggers Sarah. They'll activate Fogblade, but she's unaffected by trap cards. We'll force the activation of Climax, and things are looking okay until you realize just how hard our opponent can pop off. We'll activate HSD, destroying our own set Scythe and triggering our effect of Sarah, and because Mirmello is mandatory, even if our opponent doesn't control any spells or traps, we can set a Bottomless as well. Having said that, they can do pretty well here. They're going to bring back Dingirsu and pop 2 of our cards. That's not ideal. Afterwards, they're going to activate Galatea's effect to set a copy of Babel. They'll activate the Grave effect of Climax, flip up Babel, normal summon a copy of Harp Horror, and get in for a fair amount of damage. Yikes. This is looking bad. I don't know how we're going to get out of it. I just need one chance. Dionea, bring back Mirmello. We'll destroy the Babel on the way to Utopia Double. We'll negate our own attack in order to activate Double or Nothing and get in for lethal. So we're back with the deck. And, despite picking up that set, I don't think this deck can entertain a tryst with Tier 1. Let's do the pros and the cons. First, the pros. 1, Sarah does everything you could ever want. I mean, obviously, nostalgia support has to be strong in order to carry its decrepit, diseased, and, in this case, morally questionable archetype, but this one is low investment, easily accessible, and powerful. 2, Sarah's trap immunity is hilarious. A significant amount of answers to cards outside of, like, attacking is traps. You haven't lived until you've looked your opponent in the eye, said infinite impermanence resolves, and then summoned a Traptrix. And 3, it turns some hilarious issues with problem-solving card text to advantage. I find nothing more funny than the fact that Mirmello's effect is mandatory, and activating it even if your opponent has no spells or traps causes Sarah to plus. And the cons. 1, it has an absolutely atrocious time going second. You have to draw a very specific hand to make it through the huge amount of disruption your opponent is likely to have, and since the deck is normal summon reliant, you often won't get a chance in a single turn to bait with Sarah before pivoting into Utopia Double. 2, the lack of draw power is incredibly apparent. Decks like Orchist, Salad, and Striker, which just plus to infinity, are going to eat your card advantage game alive, even if you're consistently finding 2-for-1s. And 3, there is a non-negligible amount of Garnets in the build. While Artifact Scythe, Double or Nothing, and Treacherous are probably mandatory to give us game against better decks than us, and while we're playing Phantasme to mitigate the brickiness, sometimes you just open all holes in slot machines and can't do anything but sob. All in all, it's a pretty good deck, but it suffers from the exact same issues as every other control deck in the format. It's not good at breaking boards, and it's unable to keep up with the insane advantage swings that are the hallmark of this format's mid-range decks. So that's that. While I appreciate all of my viewers, a special thanks to my patrons, especially Colin Whalen, Michael Saumur, Adam Trevino, Adrian Bra, Distrin, Isaac Jackson, Lieutenant Labcoat, Lucas Geardas, and Second. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/mbtygo every Monday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.